Hello everyone, just a quick announcement before we start with our video. I come to a conclusion that our road with YouTube is going to end. And I have very, very good reasons why I've done it, why I made that decision. And if you want to know why I made the decision, I did make a half-an-hour video which is available on Rumble, and I will leave a link for the reasons why we're leaving YouTube in the description. Please go there, please have a look at it, and please come over to Rumble as well, because from the middle of August 2024, not a single, not one new video will come out on YouTube. All the new videos will go over to Rumble, where we have a lot more freedom of speech. But the good news is we will leave all the videos which we've recorded until the middle of August 2024 will still be available on YouTube like always. It's only the new ones are going over to Rumble. And I will give you links how to get to the channel at that site. It's in all the descriptions already. It's been there for more than 2 years. And the decision is final. Unless something dramatic happens, I just cannot see me changing my mind. And that's the news. So let us carry on and enjoy this video. Thank you for being here. God bless.
Welcome to Legacy Conversations, a channel where we preserve military memories and history.
Hello, Internet. I must tell you people, I'm excited today. I've got a Major General here with us, Les Rudman. And I want to say up front to you that the General most kindly said to me, Koos, call me by my name, which is Les. And so I might, and I will probably do that during the course of a series, because there's going to be more than one video, and I'll do that with utmost respect. But General, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming to Legacy. We're really grateful for your time, sir. And may I ask you, will you just give us a short background of yourself, of your military career, and then we can start with your parents and how you ended up in the army and see how far we go.
Good day, Koos, and thanks for the introduction. I might have a slightly different sequence to what you've asked now, but I will cover what you requested. Because I was extremely privileged to have an exciting, stimulating military career that included service with 31 Battalion, 1 Parachute Battalion, 44 Parachute Brigade, UNITA Guerrilla Movement, commanding the 32 Battalion Recce Wing in 1987, and the SA Special Forces Brigade. If I had played the lotto, then I should have won a lot of money, if you see how fortunate I was. I need to thank you at the outset and your team for the following: for allowing you to talk, allowing me to talk about a military career that spanned 42 years, 21 years in the SADF and 21 years in the SANDF, and also thanking you to providing a platform for the stories of many individuals to be captured and to be kept for posterity. This is an extremely important thing. A complete overview will be boring, and my intention is for the various talks that will follow to rather be anecdotal in nature. My efforts are definitely not an attempt to justify what I experienced and was involved in. I was a soldier. Our government decided to put us into harm's way. This is always easy for politicians to do. On the other hand, there were some of us who found a great measure of job satisfaction in what we were trained to do. We could also understand some of the justification at the military level for what we were asked and expected to do. So, from the outset, let me also credit some of the photos that I will be showing during my presentation. And I'd like to mention specifically the 3-1 Battalion Old Crows Association and other individuals like McGill Alexander and Krieger van Heerden's photos. If I've left anyone out, I apologize. It has not been intentional. How I intend to approach the talks, they're not meant to be an accurate historical narrative of a particular period of the conflict. They're rather meant to convey the privilege I have had to be able to share combat and family life with extraordinary people and very special family members under extraordinary circumstances. It's also not going to be a scientific or dispassionate reflection of times past. It's just my talk on the mindset of soldiering, the subculture I belong to, the individuals involved, and about the indirect approach taken to most aspects of soldiering. Mostly it's a recollection about the people and the value so many individuals have added to my life during and after the military. So if you look at the photo on your screen now, you will see it says, "Don't regret growing older. It's a privilege denied to many." And then next to it, it says, "It's through God's grace only that we can be present here today." I think it's very important to remind ourselves of this. And when we start getting a bit older and cranky and joints creaking, let's be grateful that we've been given the privilege to grow older. So let me continue by expressing my gratitude and admiration to and for the following. I've got to start with my wife, Elsa, my kids, Stan, Beth, and Martin. They accepted me for who I am, and they put up with all my quirks. Specifically, our conscripts that taught me so much about honor and duty whilst performing an obligatory service. I want to thank the wives, the ex-wives, the partners, the children and parents of all soldiers who allowed us to live our passion. It's important to take note of the unfair stress placed upon those women who married into the military subculture. Some managed to keep their families together in the absence of the fathers, and some did not. Regardless, they, together with our parents, all deserve our respect for the part they played to the best of their abilities. So let me show you an appropriate quotation on the screen from the book Soldiering by a retired US officer called Gold. Now on your screen, you will see the cover of the book. And then I'd like to quote just from his book. Firstly, he said, "We did not always do the right things, but we felt shame when we did not measure up to norms and expectations and something called duty." He goes on to say, "We were privileged to experience camaraderie and brotherhood through intimate association with good men." And finally, he says, "The affection among men who shared risk and discomfort is a felt phenomenon that cannot be gleaned from reading. It's one of those doing things of great intensity and duration." I need to, from my side, also apologize, and it's a long, outstanding apology. According to my Myers-Briggs personality profile assessment, I have an ESTJ personality, meaning I enjoy organizing and running activities, but I also tend to ignore others' feelings and points of view. The profile also states that I find it difficult to delegate and that I suffer from the obsessive-compulsive disorder of checking and rechecking things. This is maybe one of the reasons when I was told by military psychologists many years ago that I battle to delegate and why I keep on double-checking everything and everyone. They linked it to my parachute training that always emphasizes safety and the critical importance of checking things. Considering the above, I suppose a belated apology is due to all who had to work with and for me throughout the years. Sorry, guys. Today's talk will cover the period of growing up and attempting to answer the question as to why I became a soldier. I will then briefly present my biased perspective on the geopolitics of the time you need to understand when we served, followed by my initial and graduate training. Although not maybe that interesting, it will set the scene for the talks to follow. So I did have a life before the military and will just briefly refer to my family and school years. I was born in 1955 on the North Coast in Stanger, Natal. I come from an English background and was brought up in the Anglican church tradition. Our family moved to Knysna when I was 2 years old, and then 2 years later we moved to Silverton, Pretoria, where I started school, and I eventually matriculated in Bronkhorstspruit in 1972. Why did we move to Bronkhorstspruit? We did this when I was in Standard 3 because owing to my father unfortunately signing surety for a friend in the public service, we ended up in financial trouble and my father needed to resign from the public service and he managed to get a job at the municipality in Bronkhorstspruit. At some stage, we lived on a plot outside of town, and I can recall saving for 3 years to purchase my own air gun, the Jacado 50, that cost this massive amount of 33 Rand. I eventually added the telescope, and many birds fell to my hunting efforts. I still have the air gun today, and I use it to teach my grandchildren weapon safety and to shoot. And I also do some clandestine hunting of Indian miners in the estate I live in. Now, if you look at the following photo on the screen, it will provide some details regarding my grandparents' military involvement and political affiliations. If you look on the left side of the photo, you'll see my dad's family. They were Rudmans and Kearneys. They have an English and an Irish background, and they were supporters of Jan Smuts. They served in Southwest Africa during World War I and in the Home Guard in World War II. On my mom's side, however, the De Toys and Rautenbachs, they are Afrikaners of German and French descent. My mom was one of 10 children. Her mother was in the British concentration camps during the Anglo-Boer War, and her eldest brother was a member of the Ossewa Brandwacht. You can see the badge on the right-hand side of the photo. It's a pro-German, an Afrikaner nationalist organization who opposed South Africa's participation in the Second World War and were sympathetic to the Nazi Germany cause. So growing up in an Afrikaans community while at school in Bronkhorstspruit, I was constantly aware of the tensions between English and Afrikaans speakers. As a rule, this distinction manifested itself politically in either belonging to the Nationalist Party or the United Party. Unfortunately, this did directly impact on how myself as an Engelsman was perceived by some. But my few close Afrikaner school friends, however, never let any of these issues affect our friendship. While serving in the military, the issue of language and religion did not negatively affect my career. Not that I'm aware of, and that's the only thing that's important. I only think that the fact that the military was involved in a conflict means that these other political issues needed to take somewhat of a back seat. I received sound and professional military training based upon international accepted standards and norms. Now, the question always came up in conversation as to why did I decide to become a soldier? And initially, I did not have a very clear-cut answer. Physically, in matric, I weighed 70 kilograms. I wasn't physically strong, but I was academically strong. In my young days, the military as a career was not very popular. My late mom, I think, envisaged her son becoming a doctor or an academic, maybe even a teacher, something with an acceptable status and profile in society. I'm so sorry, Mom. As previously mentioned, I hunted birds and guinea fowl on a regular basis, and I also qualified as a first aider at school by attending and passing a series of courses together with my mother. I joined the military in turbulent times in our country's history in January 1973. Now, I do regard myself as one that's been adequately endowed with grey matter, and yet with this the so-called available intellect, it was still convenient and unacceptable for me to have accepted my privileged position as normal and to ignore what was going on in the rest of non-white South Africa. Only in later years, during the mid-80s, when deployed with the military in our townships on the Rand, that's in the Johannesburg area, would I wake up to the fact that we were living in an extremely divided and polarized country. Of course, we were constantly reminded of the Rooi Gevaar, the threat of communism, and the history of the folk. Now, the Rooi Gevaar did turn out to have merit, but fortunately for us, the demise of the Soviet Union was looming. As far as the folk was concerned, I was not very pure in the eyes of many with my English background and membership of the Anglican Church. So back to the question why I chose to become a soldier. I could never adequately answer this question until my mom, when I was about 35 years old, provided me with my grade 1 book, 1961, in which I was asked to draw a picture of my own choice. So if you look at the photo on the screen now, you will see it's got on it a tank firing, soldiers on the ground shooting, a paratrooper dropping with a parachute, an aircraft bombing. So you can decide for yourselves the reason for me for becoming a soldier. It was quite interesting for me to see that after so many years. So in my case, fully embracing life and an accompanying physical growth spurt really started for me only after school when I joined the army. So I would like to just give you, from my perspective, a brief overview of the world at that time. It's a biased perspective as I saw it. So many years ago, I came across the book called Vang 'n Boer. In English, it says Catch a Boer by Louis Botma. It was published in 2012, and unfortunately, we were not privy to the insights in this book during the conflict in Namibia. On your screen, you will see the cover of the book. I found his refreshing approach to show the parallel development of the history in South Africa and Namibia striking and appropriate. It made me realize that one needs to understand all sides involved in a conflict to make proper sense of it. This sounds logical, but it's not always practiced. So I don't want to get involved in geopolitical discussions and arguments of the mid to late 80s. I just want to share a few photos to reflect my take on events at the time, my own biased take on the situation. So if you look at the first photo, you will see it indicates the strategic oil delivery routes to the USA and Western Europe, NATO, as well as the geopositioning of Soviet forces. If you look at Africa specifically on the map, you will see there are many Soviet or Soviet vassal deployments in countries like Ethiopia, Angola, Mozambique, Guinea-Bissau, with a very definite indication that South Africa was openly stated as the objective of the Soviet Union. And why would that be the case? On the map, you will see on an annual basis, 25,000 ships passed by the Cape of Good Hope, and 90% of Europe's fuel passed along that route, and 73% of the fuel of the United States. There's also on the second photo, you will see that the US was very reliant on Africa for strategic minerals at that time. This had an extremely important impact on the American industry and in turn on the US defense capabilities. Virtually all the world's reserves of some strategic minerals lie either in the Soviet Union or in Africa. Between them, these two areas contain over 90% of the world's platinum, manganese, and chromium ores. I'd like you to look at the last photo now, and that gives you a map of Southern Africa. And on it, you will see Angola, Namibia, Botswana, South Africa. And indicated on it, just very broadly at the top, you will see in red the massive conventional and logistics buildup in the south of Angola, supposedly to sort out a guerrilla force. That massive buildup did not make sense, only to take on UNITA as the guerrilla movement. You'll see a thin blue line indicated there as well, and that is the South African deployment. I won't go into the details why we were there, but we were there, and justifiably so. Can you imagine if we did not have our forces there to serve as a tripwire? Who knows what may have happened? If you look south, if we weren't there, It would just be the vast expanses of Namibia and Botswana that needed to be crossed by whatever forces before they could get to South Africa and potentially prevent the fuel and minerals getting to Europe and the USA. So this is obviously a very complex discussion that needs a separate opportunity and a platform to dissect. So, when and where did I join the military? I joined the permanent force directly from school on the 29th of January 1973. We were told to report to the Army Gymnasium in Heidelberg, Transvaal, for the selection and orientation process. And for the first 6 weeks, while we were completing that process, we were drilled in our civvies by instructors, and my civilian shoes gave me serious corns that took a long time to sort out. We were also taken to the Military Psychological Institute in Pretoria for our detailed medical examinations. Whilst I got my eye examination, when I got there, the conscript assisting the optometrist was at the time the boyfriend of my cousin in Nigel. So I'd met him before. When he saw me, he couldn't believe that anybody was dumb enough and in his right mind to join the permanent force. He, however, decided, because he knew me, that I didn't need to do the eye tests, including the colorblind test. And he indicated on my report that my eyes were hunky-dory. Many years later, after having joined the infantry corps, I needed to be tested again. For the first time, I needed to attempt to read those books. You get those books with the colored dots and hidden figures in them. I just couldn't do it. I was eventually classified as being colorblind, but safe on green and red. I should never have been allowed to join any of the combat arms. So thanks to that ex-boyfriend of my cousin. To this day, I still maintain that I see all colors, but on a regular basis, I have arguments with my wife as to the colors of certain items under discussion. After the medical selection, we were all given the rank of candidate officers and transferred to Oudtshoorn, to the School of Infantry, to start our basic training. Now, our army training process in those days consisted of 4 phases. This allowed for the new recruits in the army to be exposed to training at various army corps before making a final decision as to what corps to choose. Phase 1 included basic training and courses like platoon weapons and driving and maintenance that we did in Bloemfontein at the School of Armor. On your photo, you can see that we were accommodated in tents for many months and had permanent force instructors. These instructors expected of us to have square beds every morning, but we were issued with square mattresses. So in order to be ready for inspection every morning, we made up our beds, broke up tomato boxes to get the planks on the sides under the sheets to get the bed square, and slept on the ground for the rest of the few months of basic training. And we slept in our coats. Great coats were our officers' coats. Never on the beds, just dusting the beds off in the morning so that they could be seen to be square. My self-esteem took a serious knock during the driving and maintenance course at the School of Armor in Bloemfontein. I failed the practical driving and needed to repeat it many years later while I was at the military academy. Now, on a break, and while visiting my folks in Bronkhorstspruit, I decided to go for my private driver's license. I arrived at my dad's automatic transmission sedan car for the test at the municipal offices where he was working. When the tester heard that I was in the army, he immediately put me into a heavy-duty vehicle, municipal truck, and tested me, not knowing that I had failed my practical military driving test. I passed with flying colors and have since been the proud owner of a civilian heavy-duty license. Phase 2 of our training consisted of a 6-month formative course at the military academy. Here we were exposed to classmates from the Air Force and the Navy and lifelong friendships and networks were established there. On the photo, on the screen, you'll see my particular class, and you'll see that we had Navy and Air Force members together with the Army members. During this formative course, we participated in 2 route marches. And if you look on the photo, you will see the first photo is we did a route march in the Cedar Mountains. And the second one shows where we're sitting high up in the hills during a route march at the Hell in Gamkaskloof. The person you can see indicated with a yellow arrow on the photo is Kokkie de Tooy. Now, Kokkie joined up with me, and Kokkie was a member of Special Forces who in later years was killed in a special operations outside of the borders of South Africa. At the end of this course that we had done, and based on my results as well as my matric results, I was selected to do my bachelor's degree at the Military Academy. Right, so phase 4 still had to be completed before doing phase 3 at the Academy. This included specialist courses like Coin and Conventional. And these courses were presented to us by Special Forces legends like Hannes Venter and Charles Nordier. Now, if you look at photo on the screen now, you'll see a photo of our group in the veld doing our conventional, our counterinsurgency course. And on the next photo, you will see, let me just give the background. We were sitting on the ground being debriefed by Charles Nordier when suddenly a large yellow snake darted between us and started entering a hole. We're not aware of the hole. All of us fell over, tried to get away, and Charles Nordier just went for it, grabbed it by the tail, and managed to wrestle it out of the ground, put it in an ammunition case to later join his selection of snakes that he kept for lectures. We were then also given the opportunity to do a course in every one of the Army's core schools, including a medical course. Now, this was an extremely good way of training us, but it was very expensive. And it did not last for many years, and then they changed the nature of our training. But we were very fortunate to undergo that. So then only we went back to do our studies to get our degrees at the Military Academy, and we refer to that as phase 3 of our training. In September 1974, we returned to the Academy, a faculty of the University of Stellenbosch, and it's in a beautiful setting. And if you look at the photo on your screen, you will see the setting, close to the sea, a really beautiful environment to study. Very interesting. We were expected to complete 3 academic years in 2 calendar years. No long holidays for us. I can recall finishing my first year exam, final exam, on a Friday, playing a rugby match locally there for the second team on the Saturday, and starting my second year on the Monday. Some of our classmates with us still needed to do their phase 4 courses after completion of their studies. So we were the largest class at that time ever to graduate, a total of 76 of us. The year group before us consisted of 6 officers. So on the photo on the screen, you will see a photo of our class that graduated. I'd like to give you some general comments on my study period. I was the only Anglican member attended to by Father Middlemost during the monthly chaplain's period. He was a kind and gracious priest. I also regularly attended the Methodist Church of Padre Elliot and his wife, Pamela. Then I met my wife-to-be on a blind date, strangely enough, arranged by my mom during a break in Pretoria. She was smitten with a soldier, I like to think, and a long-distance relationship ensued. She was an occupational therapy student at Tukkies. If you look at the photo on the screen, you will see on the left-hand side just a brief glimpse of my desk in my room. And on the right-hand side, it's Elsje Janneke, my future long-suffering wife-to-be. I had really hit the jackpot. Army food agreed with me, and I started growing. Did lots of running and swimming, and 4 of us also decided to swim across the bay, Saldanha Bay. It was a distance of 2 kilometers. We had read somewhere in a magazine that the guys who did this kind of swimming covered themselves in a sort of a grease. The only grease we had available was in the car pool, so we covered ourselves in car grease. We eventually finished the swim, but we battled for days on end to get the grease off our bodies. We also had some celebrities visit us as VIP guests during formal dinners. On the photo, you'll see on the left-hand side, Chris Barnard, and on the right-hand side, Annelien Kriel. Now, while we were studying, Operation Savannah in 1975 happened. Many of our compatriots who were not selected or chose not to go and study were involved in this operation and even decorated for valor. We were highly frustrated and felt that we were missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime experience of war. We asked to talk at that time to Commandant George Kreis, the chief military instructor at the military academy, and we begged him, please, sir, can we just, even if it's in our break, go to Grootfontein to do guard duties? We just felt we needed to be part of this operation. His response stayed with me for the rest of my military career. He stated that any military worth its salt never halts training during a period of war and conflict. Training must continue to ensure a new generation of soldiers is ready for the future. Those were wise words, but not the words we wanted to hear. During our studies, we were also given the opportunity to do a route march in the Fish River Canyon in Namibia. It all started off well, but then it rained in the mountains and the river came down and flooded. We were forced out of the valley onto the sides of the canyon, and later we put into operation our military training. We removed our uniforms, waterproofed our clothing and kit, attached ourselves in groups to a rope, and then attempted to float back down to ice. We eventually managed it, but there were some very harrowing moments. So on your screen, you will see a photo and showing the canyon, and also a photo where we were pushed up onto the side of the canyon by the flooding river. The photo on the right shows, and it's indicated with a yellow arrow, myself on the left, we're just joking around, and on the right, my long friend of many years, Johan Durant. Now, I'll talk about him a bit more in a later talk, but many years later, Johan Durant was shot down and killed by a SAM-8 missile in the Kwando-Kabango province of southeastern Angola. And this happened while I was talking to him on the radio, but more about that later. The next photo will show that we were eventually commissioned as officers after just more than 3 years as candidate officers. I successfully completed my studies and was awarded the Sword of Honor on parade by General Viljoen. And I was also the first recipient of the PJG, the Vos Medal for academic achievements. This was named after the first dean of the military academy. I think it was a mistake. It should have been called a medallion, because I have a medal, but I can't wear it as a medal. So I had it mounted, and my wife wears it as jewelry. We all graduated in September 1978. So now we were ready for real soldiering. My talks will now focus on providing anecdotes from different units I was privileged to serve in. Now, my first unit was 7th SAI, 7th South African Infantry Battalion, where I served as the company's second in command, 1977 to 78. 7th SAI is a base was stationed at that point in time still at Burke's Luck at the Potholes, close to Graskop in the Eastern Transvaal. I was appointed as the company's second in command, with Captain Karel Holst as my company commander. Commandant Bux Gous was our battalion commander. And in my second year at 7th SAI, Major Blackie Swart became my company commander and also one of my mentors. Some of my friends who did not study at the military academy were already staff members there, and they were a great help to me to get to know the unit. The base was very isolated, and it was extremely difficult for anyone to go on AWOL. We once caught a troop who had gone AWOL by stealing a roadworks grader and using it as his getaway transport. He did not get very far. We were also fortunately far enough away from the headquarters in Pretoria to warrant many visits by the brass, and so we could do hard and realistic training. And Jungle Letter, later of 32 Battalion, was our abseiling specialist. So on your screen, you will see a photo, and the photo indicates some of the training we did, the hard training, and obstacle crossing, water obstacle crossing, abseiling, route marches, land obstacle crossing, etc. Now, 7th SAI used to get a July intake, and I really respected those guys. Most of them decided not to select to further their academic studies after school, and as such, they immediately started working and studying in and for different trades. This was great for us, as the soldiers we received were already hardened and used to working. They also arrived with many skills that were put to good use during their conscription and during our operational deployment. Skills like motormechs, carpenters, electricians, etc. We never got into a situation where we didn't have some of our conscripts who had the training to assist us with those issues. So, fitting in at my first unit, I've just come from the military academy, you feel you know everything, and now you get to real life. We had excellent warrant officers at 7th SAI. But although very professional, they did not make life easy for a young officer at first. I can distinctly remember very often asking a sergeant major for some advice, then they would just shrug their shoulders and say, "Find out, Lieutenant." I later realized the value of this. Names like Sam Mew, K.G. Meyer, Jock Botes, and Tony Timmerman come to mind. And then RSM Satang Hatting lived up to his name. I, however, definitely need to give recognition to firstly Sergeant Ruiz, who took it upon himself to show me the ropes in the company. And then also to Corporal Boyson and his wife, who welcomed me into their home. And I spent many hours visiting them and indirectly learning more about the unit and its way of life. My interaction with NCOs was frowned upon by some, but I hugely benefited personally and professionally from this. Since that time, I've been privileged to make many close friends within the NCO and warrant officers' environments. And I've learned to have so much respect for especially the very often unrecognized and undervalued role they play. Our first operational deployment took place from January to May 1977, and in those days we still departed by train from Graskop through South Africa via the A to Grootfontein, and I still recall the Dankie Tannies, the Southern Cross ladies providing us with cookies and cold drinks with a stopover during the stopover at the A. We were deployed to the Suidelite base in Verhoekenveld, and our aim was to control the area, as well as secure the mine manager and his wife living in a house at Swartboysdrift on the Kunene River. Just grab a drink here. Now, Suidelite is a semi-precious stone that is mined only at this place in the Verhoekenveld and some other place in South America. Our role was to do patrolling on foot, anti-swapper patrols, and by Unimogs that we were still using as our vehicles, and we did observation posts. I'd like to talk about our first contact. This took place on the 13th of April, 1977. If you look at the photo, there are just some photos indicating Sudelite base in the rocky areas, the guard towers. On the left bottom, you will see the mine manager and his wife at their home on the banks of the Kunene River. And just on this, on the right, to the right of that, there's the remnants of an RPG-7 that was fired at them at the house, but exploded short. And the final photo to the right of that indicates the area where we had the contact. So once the RPG was fired, it was reported to us at the Sudelite base, a few kilometers away from Swartwesdrift. And Captain Halls brought our reaction force down to the river. I obviously joined them. We then engaged in speculative fire from both sides. And I'll never forget, and I think I got so much respect for him, that when the fire stopped and we couldn't quite make out where the enemy was, Captain Halls got out from behind his cover, behind the tree, in order to draw fire and then to give us fire instructions based on where he picked up enemy movement. But he was an interesting character. After a while, he came bored and he said, let's take over. I'm going back home. There's nothing happening here. So later we deployed the water-cooled Browning 12 7mm gun in position to engage the enemy. It was called the Sendlan or the Missionary for obvious reasons. Some general comments on my first deployment. I diarized the contact details, that contact and quite a few others in my pocket Bible that was issued to us. And if you look at the photo on the screen, you'll see the inscriptions. It's a bit dirty, but it traveled quite a few kilometers and years with me. We also confirmed that our soldiers did well, and it confirmed our training standards were okay. It was also interesting in the area to see a monument for the Dorsland trackers. Those are the guys who left South Africa, wanted to get away from the Brits and headed north. We met up in the Kookeveld there in the Swartwesdrift area with Jan and Atta van der Merwe. They were Africans, but descendants of the trackers, and with their loyalties divided between SWAPO and the government. I also decided to commence my postgraduate studies in strategic studies at the University of South Africa, UNISA. And my promoter was Professor Dion Fourie, who in later years became and still is a close friend. I used the time after hours sitting in the ops room at Sudelite to work on my assignments. Didn't do very well in them, but managed to scrape through and on. Back in South Africa after our deployment, I seriously continued working on my relationship with Elsha. I then proposed telephonically via a tiki box with a reverse charge call to her parents' home. She was not impressed with this unromantic gesture, but did agree to marry me. I then followed it up with a personal proposal and getting her parents' permission later when they were visiting the Graskop area. After I got their permission and they left to go and visit God's window at Graskop, I chased after them. My friend Koos had a military motorbike license. I got onto the back and we caught up with them, and then I had the opportunity to personally ask her to marry me. Not the thing that Valentine's Day cards are made of. Okay, we then decided to get married on the 6th of May, 1978, the following year. That would be over our next operational deployment. So we deployed in March to the Ruakana area. My company commander was now Blackie Swart. And Don van der Merwe, later of 32 Battalion, was one of our platoon commanders, as well as Wynand de Tooy, who was another platoon commander. On the 14th of April, Don, I recall, was involved in a contact. We had no casualties, fortunately. And then they decided to give me a bachelor's party at the Ruacana base, but it obviously needed to be quite downscaled, fortunately for me. I was then told, if I want to get married, make your own way back to South Africa. And then I started from Ruacana begging vehicle transport, got to Grootfontein, then started begging for space on an aircraft down to South Africa, and only managed to get back 1 week before my wedding. I think it was good. I missed all the drama with all the arrangements, the pre-arrangements, and I just arrived for the party. I was supposed to return 2 weeks after the wedding to continue with the deployment, but my commanders fortunately told me to take my new wife to Bergsluk to continue in a training role. On the screen, there's just a photo of the day I caught her. It's a wedding photo. So, as newlyweds, there was no military accommodation for us. We moved 7 times in 6 months between Graskop Municipal Caravan Park, Pilgrim's Rest, a flat in Graskop, paid guest, and we had to pay guest accommodation rates, all at our own cost. Fortunately, we were still newlywed, loved one another, and could look past this discomfort. At the end of 1978, a new commander was appointed to take over from Buxhouse, and that was Colonel Hendrik Schultz. 7SAI was also tasked to relocate to Phalaborwa, and I got the indication that I would be transferred to Heidelberg Army Gymnasium as an instructor on the officer's formative course. So I arrived there, and in 1979, the branch OC was Major Johan Brink. Some of the other instructors that should be known to many were Jaap Nel and Jeff Holland-Muter. He was called behind his back Stemani Bos because of his beard. Elsa and I were fortunate to be provided with accommodation this time adjacent to the officers' mess, a self-contained flat. And then not long after my arrival, I was nominated to attend the Combat Team Commander's course, once again taking me away from home for quite a few months. The first formative course I acted as an instructor only commenced in September 1979 after my course. Now, if you look at the course photo on the screen, you will see the members there, and I had to work harder than the students to ensure I knew what to teach them. They were a naughty, but highly intelligent and critical bunch. Many of them I got to work with and became friends with in later years. Some of the names that come to mind are Lawrence Smith, Tinus van Staden, Gustav van Feyren, Roy Marais, Jim Ross, Eric Rabi, Frans Fourie, Sid Zeeman, and Andre Retief. So sometimes in conversation, when some of these guys are in conversation with others and I'm there, then they say, yes, but Les Rudman was my formative instructor. Then my first question is always to them, do you reckon I was successful? But in any event, we also participated in many long distance runs after hours. We also did the Harry Smith mountain race as a course. I finally graduated from UNISA with my honors degree in strategic studies. And then once again, a decision was taken to move the formative branch from Heidelberg to the Army College in Pretoria. I didn't qualify for accommodation with my rank and lack of children. I requested an interview with Director Infantry, who had a sympathetic ear, and he gave me the opportunity to make a proposal as to where I should go. I said anywhere in the operational area. He then suggested 3-1 Battalion, and I agreed. Then I had the opportunity, obviously, to interact and to discuss this with Candidate Officer Gustav van Feyren, one of my formative students in Heidelberg, who was from 3-1 Battalion. Today, still a very close friend and a rich farmer in the Letsitele area who doesn't want to lend me money. Okay. With the movement of the formative branch to the Army College, I was given the opportunity to do a recce visit to Omega. I flew up and I met up with the second in command, then Major Thijs Buitendag, who promised to have a Kimbo, a wooden hut, ready for Elsha, our 2-month-old son Stan, and myself on our arrival. Now, let me just regress a bit and talk about my son's birth, Stan. Stan was born on the 7th of February 1980 at Heidelberg in the Transvaal at the hospital. At that point in time, it was beginning to be fashionable for husbands to attend the births of their children. So I was going to do that. So when Elsha was wheeled into the theater on a weekday, I followed and was stopped by the sister at the entrance to the theater. I explained to her in no uncertain terms that I intended to be present at the birth. She looked at me and she informed me immediately that should I pass out, she would leave me on the floor. Needless to say, this brave PF captain in uniform went into the theater holding Elsha's hand. The next thing I recall, I was lying flat on my back with the sister scolding me and saying, "I'd warned you, Captain." And there I was, ending up being casevaced out of the theater while Elsha was trying to conceive our firstborn. A huge embarrassment, but such is life. And needless to say, I did not insist on attending the births of my other 2 children. Fortunately for me, I also obtained permission from Commandant Hall of 3-1 Battalion to attend the basic parachute course in Bloemfontein prior to reporting for duty at 3-1 Battalion. I seriously needed to and did work on my fitness preparation, and I successfully completed the basic parachute course as the only officer among all the conscripts. The instructors did not make life easy for me. It was, however, a highlight of my career. I need to mention also that I had decided in advance that I would resign from the military if I did not make the selection in this course. By the way, I have a serious fear of heights. On our first night jump, my parachute malfunctioned with rigging lines draped over the canopy and forming a so-called bra. And I needed to deploy my reserve chute. My initial stupid reaction was that I could not be seen to have to deploy a reserve in front of all the national servicemen. Fortunately, after about 2 seconds, the excellent hanger training kicked in and I landed very hard, but alive. If you look at the photos on the screen, you'll see the certificate, a bit of a faded certificate of my basic parachute qualification, as well as the course photo that I'm very proud of. So, Koos, this concludes my first talk. During the next talk, I intend focusing on the very interesting times we as a family and me as a soldier had at 3-1 Battalion in the Western Caprivi, and my operational exposure. Thank you.
Thank you, Les. I really appreciate this. I have a few questions, Will, if you don't mind. And I want to put picture 7 on again. That's the one with also our brandwacht and the one with yeah. Now, where you see on the left side, as I would be looking at it, there's 2 red little things. Is that the famous royalty? Is that the famous red?
That was the red oath that people had to swear to support, and in Afrikaans it was called the royalty. Yes. And both my grandfather and my grandmother served, and yeah.
And if I remember correctly, that was for soldiers who served outside South Africa. They would be wearing this royalty.
That's right. So the service was in Southwest Africa, then Southwest Africa. Well, my grandfather was there, not my grandmother. Yeah.
Do you think, looking back, that was a good thing? Would that not target a soldier perhaps when he's on leave in the Union of South Africa, and you know some of the people don't like the fact that he took the oath? Wasn't that dangerous?
it was very interesting times. And from my dad's perspective, we always say that Mandela was jailed and he became the president. In my dad's time, he lived in Markwood. He grew up in Markwood in the Free State, and his father, when they were serving there, my dad actually joined the commando as well at the age of 16 whilst at school, which didn't make him very popular. But who was our first president? Swartz, was it? Of the Republic? He was obviously on the nationalist side and anti the war, but his brother was a United Party man, a Smuts man. And in those days in Markwood, they actually jailed him as well, and his brother was involved in that. But those were difficult times, and then it was an English Afrikaans, but not purely English Afrikaans. A lot of people were Jannie Smuts people, and they liked him and what he was doing. And that's a long discussion for another day. But yes, my dad had hard times at school because of being this Englishman in a predominantly Afrikaans farmer community there. But yeah, that was life.
Yeah, I have to admit, my own family on my father's side were Johnny Smith's people too. They were definitely taking the red oath. But now, I need to know, you won the Sword of Honor there at the Academy.
Yeah.
Now, looking back, Les, is that good or bad? I mean, do they put more pressure on you because you won that very distinctive award?
I will talk about my time as a military attaché in later years and what that meant. But the Sword of Honor is very unique to the military academy, and it's very nice to be awarded that. But most people serving in working units outside of the military academy couldn't care what happens there. They don't want you to even talk about that. They say you must now become a real soldier. Forget about all your academic things and just put your head down and work. So it was never discussed really outside of after I was awarded the Sword of Honor.
I was asked a question by somebody to specifically ask an officer. And the question is, a firearm would have like a number on it, and it is issued to you. You sign for that thing. Now, would
That's
that be
right.
the same with a sword, which the officers used during parades? Does that thing have a number on it?
The sword is not numbered, but it is engraved with my details on. And it's not that I did not mention that in the early days when I joined, officers and candidate officers, so in my first formative course at the academy, we still wore Sam Browns with swords. So we did the sword drill, but later on, when our uniform was changed and the Sam Browns were removed, the sword was then just presented as a trophy. We did not actually use it on parades anymore.
Now, being a young man in the military academy, was it possible that you could challenge a opponent to a sword fight there, or chase each other around a bit for fun?
No. These swords were so blunt because they're ceremonial swords. It would be quite an effort to try and hurt somebody with it. No, but there was no such thing. No, not at all.
The Rhodesians here on Legacy all say to me that they feel that the Rhodesian Bush War was just a stepping stone to get to South Africa by the communists, the Soviet Union. But we know why. I mean, you explained the strategic value of South Africa, which I suppose is still there. Would you agree with him that it was just a stepping stone to get to us?
I think it was a logical progression to get closer. So yeah, I think so. They were forming a buffer between us and some of the anti-South African forces at that point in time, yes.
Do you think we could have done more? And I know it's a political question, but could we have done more from our side to keep Rhodesia standing?
It is a political question because there were so many pressures, and I wasn't privy to that, but what I read and what I hear, from a soldier's perspective, it would have been easy to do much more and to assist. Whether that would have been the correct political decision to take, I don't think so. And even people like John Foster started going against the Rhodesian government and trying to force them into a political solution, which in any case has to be the solution to any conflict.
There seems to be a bit of a debate going on legacy. I read the comments and some people talk to me more privately, especially the national servicemen. I'm very grateful that you paid tribute to them right in the beginning. But am I correct, and I've asked this for all general officers, senior officers, did the senior officer really care about his men?
That's once again a question that you need to put and look at every individual concerned, every officer concerned. Some did and some didn't. I tend to think those who were deployed operationally a lot and had to depend on one another, regardless of your rank, very definitely did so. Some of the officers, and not all of them, who were not exposed to so many operational experiences, I think it was easy to sort of just disregard the requirements and the people as normal human beings at times as well. So it's not there's not a right or a wrong answer that I can give you. That was dependent on the individual.
So may I ask you then, that you, General Rudman, that you care about your people?
I was so scared in operations that if I didn't care for them, they would not help me and support me. And I can tell you, my life was saved on various occasions by soldiers, troops, NCOs, and I'm going to say to you, I did care for them, but I respected them and incredibly, it was just great being with them and knowing that we are a brotherhood while we are functioning. So yes, care maybe sounds a bit of a sissy thing to say to a soldier, but respect, yes, definitely.
Thank you, sir. I'm really looking forward to our next episode, and I'm sure that so does everyone else who's listening here.
Thank you. It was good talking. Thanks, Koos.
And then I will just say here at the end, we always end up our episodes by saying to all of you, until we meet again, God bless.
Thank you for watching. Please like, subscribe, and ring the bell to receive notifications.